Hello and welcome back to 27 Crows Radio. I'm here with my co-host Mark Collet for a new episode of Alt-Right 101. Today's subject is masculinity, or more specifically, beta males. It has long been my position that the previous 50 to 60 years have been devastating to men and very beneficial to women. Women often cry oppression while men give them everything they want. But why are men bending over backwards for women now? And in the past, men embraced the masculine role of protector, provider, and loving father. Why do so many articles in the media claim that masculinity is toxic and the cause of all wars? It's not a stretch of the imagination to say that the concept of masculinity has been under attack for quite some time, and is something that needs to be reclaimed by strong and capable men. Thank you for joining me again, Mark.
Thank you for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, these are getting to be fun weekly episodes. I'm really enjoying it. So I wanted to start off by you describing to the audience, what is a beta male?
A beta male is someone who isn't in charge of his own life. That's the fundamental thing. He's someone who is always second best. He has no confidence. He's weak physically, but most importantly, he's weak mentally. He has very little self-belief. He panders to people around him. He often jumps on any bandwagon that is left-wing or SJW in nature. He is someone who doesn't take charge. He is someone who's happy to be second place in every way. He doesn't pursue manly pursuit. In fact, he rejects masculinity. He'll often wear things like "I'm a feminist" t-shirts or clothes that look feminine, skinny jeans, clothes that would suit a girl more than they would suit a man. He doesn't partake in sports or physical fitness. He is sometimes skinny and weedy, sometimes fat, unshaven, like a neckbeard. But the thing that unites these beta males is, as I said earlier, they don't take charge of their lives or anything in their lives. They are men who wouldn't even be in the pack, let alone be an alpha who would lead the pack. They're people that in a healthy society would be left behind. In fact, in a healthy society, men like that don't exist, because healthy societies don't create men like that. Healthy societies create strong men, men that youngsters can look up to, men that women can love, but most importantly, men that can build civilizations and men that can defend those civilizations.
Yeah, whenever I think of like an alpha male, I think of someone like General Patton, who just took control and took charge and frowned upon soldiers who weren't as strong as he was. But when I think of like an alpha male, I think of a man who just takes control of his life. Not necessarily that every man needs to be out leading an army, but leading the army of me, of my own personal life. Would you say that's accurate?
Oh, definitely. And that, really, you've summed it up better than I did. That is the point. You have to, may not be the leader. You might not be the leader of the pack. You might not go on to run a massive company. You might not go on to be in charge of an army or a nation, but you have to be in charge of yourself. You have to be in charge of your own destiny. You have to be confident in who you are, and you have to be masculine. You have to adopt your gender role and revel in the fact that you are a man, and you have to live up to what it is to be a man. And when I say to be a man, I'm talking about traditional gender roles. And anyone who rejects those traditional gender roles is an enemy of the West, because it was those gender roles that built our civilization. It was those men who ensured that Western civilization thrived and survived, even in harsh times.
And when we look at our ancestors and the things they survived, things like plagues and earthquakes and armies coming in to take over and take their women and rape their children, we live in such comfort today that I feel that's contributed to the loss of having one's own masculinity, is that we're just surrounded by so many conveniences, and we don't have to have men at the boundary of our society, of the tribe, looking after everyone because someone's coming in to crusade and steal everybody's food.
No, that's definitely a point. technology has advanced, and it is fair to say that when society or civilization gets to the point it has, it does create weaker men, because good times create weakness, harsh times create strong men, harsh times weed out the weak from the strong, and the strong survive, and unfortunately the weak fall by the wayside. But that is nature's way, and we have made society so easygoing, we have made life so easy, that there aren't pressures on men to be great or strong. In fact, quite the opposite. Men can now survive without even leaving their home, cocooned safely in their bedroom, surrounded by technology. And that has been one of the major contributing factors to men becoming more weak.
And everybody seems to have different theories as far as how this happened. You know, a lot of men will say, blame all women, it's feminism, and some will say it's because of, like we just stated, technology. We've gotten too comfortable. We haven't had really tumultuous times like we used to. But what would you say is one of the main causes as far as how men have lost their way in recent decades? How did this happen?
Well, I definitely think feminism is a key point, but importantly, it's not the only key point. But let me expand on feminism. First of all, feminism has caused the divorce rate to increase. It's caused women to want to go out and work. They haven't wanted to be mothers. They've not wanted to stick with one man. They've not wanted to be a loving wife. And because of that, you've seen a rise in single-parent families, whether that be through divorce or whether that just be through promiscuity and women being able to go out, sleep with whoever they want, not marry the man, and the state picks up the tab.
Yeah,
and
that's no consequences, yeah.
Exactly, a lack of consequences. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And that's led to a really, really bad situation where there is increasingly less and less men in the home. Children, young males, it affects young males far more than it affects young females, grow up without their father. And not having a father figure means you don't have the discipline and order in the home. You see, the mother is the caregiver. She imparts the empathy. She imparts the compassion. She imparts the feelings. The father imparts the order and the discipline. How many times do you hear a mother say, wait till your dad gets home and you're gonna get it for doing this? And it's because the dad comes home and he lays down the discipline. Equally, when a child falls over, the majority of the time that child will run to the mother, because the mother is the caregiver. She is the one who imparts empathy and compassion, whereas the dad gives the order and the discipline. So when you remove the father from the home, not only do you remove order and discipline, but you also remove the primary strong male role model in the child's life. So the little boy, instead of having as his primary role model his father, instead of looking up to his dad and seeing a strong man who he can base himself upon and grow up to be like, the little boy can only base his future self on the behavior of his mother. And because of that, increasingly, little boys are growing up with a feminine mindset. They're growing up to think that empathy and compassion are the important things. Now, that's not good for men, because that isn't their natural gender role. Obviously, I'm not saying men should be completely lacking in empathy or compassion, but men are far more stoic, because men are traditionally the protectors. They're the ones who go to war. They're the ones that put their life on the line to do difficult tasks like go down coal mines or, as I said, protect the tribe. And when men lose that natural instinct, they become like women. They become emasculated. They become feminine. And they need strong male role models. But that's not just in the home. Yes, men are now more and more absent in the home. More and more children grow up without a dad. But men used to have, or boys used to have, strong male role models outside of the home. They used to do activities like scouting. They used to go to school where there'd be strong male role models in their school. And increasingly, these strong male role models have been removed. Children now in schools are surrounded by feminism. They're surrounded by pressures that make them more effeminate. Strong males have been removed from the school system and replaced by weak, liberal, left-leaning men who, again, impart a warped sense of what young boys should be to these young boys when they're at their most impressionable. So young men, due to the influences of feminism, have lost the strong male role models in their early lives who would shape them into the men they need to become, who gave them that inspiration, who they could base their future selves upon. So men have become weak, men have become effeminate, and part of that is definitely down to feminism, and especially when it comes to the single mother issue and the fact that women don't feel like they need a man anymore in the house, which is robbing children of the order, the discipline, and the role models they need so much.
And I've seen this so many times, particularly with single mothers, where the children do not learn respect because the mother, while she's a nurturer, isn't always good, not all, but isn't always good at being a disciplinarian, and that's very much the male role. And it is my belief that only men can teach little boys how to be men and how to have that respect for women in a way that women will reciprocate that respect back. I've dated enough men who were raised by single mothers to know that they do lack that. They do lack a certain respect, a lack of knowledge as far as how to treat a woman, how to engage in the relationship, and they think everything can be cured just by being really empathetic. And that leaves a lot of longing in the relationship and a lot to be desired.
It certainly does. And then these young boys end up being wrapped in cotton wool. I hope people, your side of the pond, understand what I mean by that. But because women are more compassionate, because women think with feelings rather than with facts. Facts are more of a male thing. That's not to say women can't understand facts, but women are more emotionally driven. Now, because of that, they look at their sons and they're worried that something's going to happen to them. They're worried that they might get hurt or they might graze their knee, whereas dads are far more, well, the boys have got to go out and play, boys have got to be boys.
And knock them down and push them around. Let's fight in the yard in the mud. Like, that's how they learn.
Exactly. But mothers are different. They're like, oh my God, I don't want my son to fall over. What if he gets hurt? Oh, have you got your knee pads on? Are you wearing your helmet? Oh, I don't want you climbing that tree. And because now the woman is increasingly the only parent in the home, the children are wrapped in cotton wool. They are not allowed to go out and play. They're not allowed out on their bikes. They're not allowed to build tree houses. They're not allowed to build rope swings. They're not allowed to go climbing and running down the side of hills or rolling down the side of hills like we did as kids. They don't come in covered in mud or bruises and scrapes. And that used to happen to us all the time. We used to go out, we used to play, and we used to come back. But importantly, we knew occasionally we would get injured, but those injuries were almost like a rite of passage. If you grazed your knee, you'd show the other kids, oh, look what happened to me, I survived it. But now, little Billy, he can't go out and play, because if he goes out and play, he might get hurt. We've got to wrap him in cotton wool, and there's no man to say, no, he's going out and he's playing. I'm taking our son out and we're building that tree house. And if somebody gets a few cuts and bruises, well, that's all part of it. That's part of growing up.
You can stitch it back up. Yeah.
Exactly. And that follows through in schools, because obviously the left run the school system and you've got this liberal think. We used to play this game when I was a kid. It was called conkers. I don't know if you have it in the States. You get a conker from the trees. Horse chestnuts fall from the trees. You get the conker out. You'd push a hole in it and you'd put a piece of string through it. Then you'd hang your conker down, and then another child would swing their conker at yours and try to smash it, and they would try and hit your conker, and afterwards you'd have a go, and you'd keep doing it until someone's conker shattered into pieces, and you were then the winner. It's just an old English game. Now, this was a game that all young boys played, because we all used to go out and we used to collect the conkers. People used to climb the trees to get the ones with the highest up, and they'd get a big shiny conker, they'd stick it on a shoelace, and then you would play. But now, schools have banned it. And the schools that still allow it make children wear safety goggles while they play conkers in case someone gets hit in the eye. Now, my whole time at school, I never know knew any child that got hit in the eye with a conker. I mean, you'd have to be a complete and utter retard to get hit in the eye with a conker. I mean, what you'd be doing with it to get hit in the eye, I don't know. It just never happened. But in case it does, we have to wear safety goggles or ban it completely. So there's another old English game that we used to play as kids that was part of growing up that kids don't play. They don't play. And I know there has to be some safety regulations, but when we were kids, every summer we'd be out on our bikes almost every day unless it was pouring with rain.
Yes.
And we never had knee pads. We never had elbow pads. I never had a helmet when I was a child, and neither did any of my friends. And we just went biking off for the day and we came back and no one got injured. But now you see kids and they go out biking and they look like they're wearing that sort of military grade bomb disposal equipment, and you're thinking to yourself, what's happened? They're not going to grow up to be men. They're scared of taking a tumble. They're scared. And we would dare each other to do stupid things. I mean, I remember we went to a stately home once, me and my friends, and we went to the top of the stairs leading up to the door, and we biked down the stairs at breakneck speed, and no one got injured. It was just fun. And I remember I was the one who was obviously stupid enough to do it first, but I didn't get injured. It was fun. And afterwards,
why does that
everyone
not
was like,
surprise me?
go Mark, you did it. And it was just fantastic. I've got fond memories. But if a kid was caught doing that now, there'd be hell on. And there'd be teachers, there'd be social workers would be called, you know, a case would be raised. You might even have the police there. And this is how ludicrous it's got. You wrap these kids in cotton wool and you protect them, but you're not protecting them because they never become men. They never grow up. They never conquer their fears. They never learn. And because of that, they end up feminized and emasculated and wimpy, and then they're a beta male and they're scared of their own shadow. But that's not what Western males were ever like. That's not the way of the Western man. It never was, and it shouldn't be. And then people wonder why when you see these grooming gangs doing these horrendous things, or these refugees doing these horrendous acts to white girls, say, why aren't white men doing anything? Well, because they're all beta males. They're too scared. They're too scared to even defend their own women because they've been feminized, they've been emasculated, they've been wrapped in cotton wool. They need to get the safety goggles out to go and collect conkers. Well, they're not going to stand up and be warriors, are they? If you can't play conkers without safety goggles, you're not going to be a warrior. And that's what they're doing. That's the role of feminizing and emasculating males, to make us weak, to destroy Western man, to turn warriors and pioneers into wimps. That is what they're doing to us.
I will give you like a teensy-weensy bit of pushback as far as the helmets are concerned, because a helmet did save my life. So I will say, kids, wear your helmets. You can forego the other stuff and just get a broken arm. Every kid when I was a kid had at least one broken arm through school. It was like, who was going to break their arm next? And now, you don't see that anymore. Someone comes in with a broken arm and it's like, well, what did the parent do wrong? Whereas, just like you said, getting a broken arm at a soccer match was like a rite of passage when I was a kid. Like I said, who was going to get it next? And men used to have these kind of retreats or these special places where they would go with other boys to learn how to be men. When I was a kid, it was Boy Scouts. My brother went to Boy Scouts all the time. My dad was an Eagle Scout. Those were values and moral virtues that they taught to young men to teach them how to be men. And they would go away, get away from the females for a while, learn from the older men. And that was like a rite of passage for them. But we've stripped men of those things, feminized them, made it where, like with Boy Scouts, they're homophobic if they don't let a gay guy come in and be the leader of a Boy Scout troop. Or now they're making even new ones where girls can be in the Boy Scouts, even though it's deliberately called Boy Scouts. Girls sell their cookies, and then boys sell their popcorn, and they have their separate troops. But it's just gotten to the point where women want to invade all those spaces, so men don't have their own space to learn how to be men. Women repeatedly invade those spaces.
No, I agree. And that's another thing that I really want to talk about here is the death of the traditional male pastime or hobby. Now, men used to have a variety of pastimes, but so many of them were outdoors. They were team sports. They were being in the Scouts. They were going walking, climbing, exploring. When we were kids, as I said earlier, we were always out on our bikes, and we loved to build either tree houses, rope swings, or dams across rivers. And you would always get dared to do the first kid to cross the dam or swing on the rope swing or, you know, climb up to the highest branch on the tree.
Johnny, see if it's sturdy.
Yeah, you were a hero, though. If you were the guy that did it, you were a hero. And this had two effects. It made young men strong, but it was also about team building. It was also about getting to know your boundaries, getting to know yourself and other men. And it taught you how to behave around other men. It taught you how to be part of a group, how to be part of a clan, how to be part of a little community of men, of boys who were becoming men. But that's not the case anymore. Young men have hobbies which are very insular, which take place indoors. And yeah, young men have always had indoor hobbies. I'm not saying they didn't. You know, young men have always collected things. They have had toy soldiers. They played with things indoors. They've collected stamps. But they always balance that with the outside world. But now young men are completely cocooned indoors, playing computer games all night till 4 a.m. They spend all Saturday and Sunday indoors just playing these games. And I know what they'll say. They'll go, oh, but we're talking to others. You know, it's a group game. It's online. We're part of a group. But it's not the same.
No, it's
You're
not
not having face-to-face interactions. You're not reading people. You're not learning from body language. You're not learning from genuine reactions. You're not out in the wild doing something where you form a proper team. Now, don't get me wrong. This is an attack on people who play computer games. I love retro games. I really do love retro games. But that's like maybe an hour a day. That's me. What was I?
Duck Hunter? Mario?
I am the Mario king. I'll say to anyone, if no one can beat me at Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Super Nintendo. But the fact is, I'm not up till 4 every morning playing Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And we as kids, we played these games, but we mainly played them sort of in winter or bad weather. You know,
For us, it was summer because it's blazing hot outside.
We were out all summer because it's obviously not as hot here in the UK, and we were out until it got dark at night and too cold to be out. We were always out on our bikes. We were always out playing. But now these kids are sat indoors, and these games are so much more involved. They're so much more immersive that people get lost in these fantasy worlds.
When the 3D came out, I think that's when the shift really started happening, was when the 3D games came out.
Yeah, definitely. And now, when they're online, you've got these kids who literally just live there. They're on World of Warcraft for 12 hours a day. And then you get guys who are in their mid-30s, and they're living at home with mum and dad. They've never had a job. They've never had a girlfriend. They're sat playing these games. They're in this fantasy realm, and they're not becoming men. They're not engaging in real hobbies. They're not engaging with other men. They're not meeting people. They're not becoming part of a pack. They're not meeting females either. And then they regress, and then they have an unhealthy diet because you see these people
eating junk food while they play.
Yeah, bottles of Mountain Dew, Doritos, takeaway pizza. They get fat, they're disheveled, they don't dress well. They don't look like men of old. They don't act like men of old. In fact, they are men technically because of that age, but they're still like little boys. They're man children, they're beaters, they're living in their parents' homes, and they've not progressed because they're not basing their life on strong male role models. They've not become part of a pack. They've not gone outside. They've not learned to become men. And then they don't know how to interact with other men in the real world. All they know how to do is shout and swear at kids who are playing Halo with them.
And if you can't interact with other men, how are you going to interact with women?
How are you going to interact with women? How are you going to form when we did our first episode, we talked about community. How are we going to form a community? How can we possibly form a community when we can't relate to each other, when we can't get on, when we can't look at each other in the eye, when we're cocooned in our houses, playing games and staring at flickering screens and swearing at 12-year-old kids in America for shooting you in an online game, and it's pitiful.
You don't know who's on the other end. Yeah, you could be like, it's like those commercials when it's like, I don't know if you've seen it. I got to bring it up, slightly off topic, but it's all these like Marines overseas in Afghanistan. They're huddled in front of this video game. Man, this guy is good, and it's like a 12-year-old on the other end playing. Yeah.
That's how it is. That's how it is. And then these guys get to about 40. Their parents finally sort of pass on, or, you know, eventually they have to move out because their parents get too old. and their lives pass them by. They've never become a man. They've never had real experiences. They can't get a woman. They don't have genuine real life friends. And it's very sad. And that's what the enemies of the West have done. They've foisted this poison upon us, and they've turned the greatest men who ever lived, these warriors, pioneers, explorers, these people who colonized every corner of the globe, and they've turned us into beta male man children who can't even look themselves in the mirror, let alone step outside their front door and look other people in the eye and go, yeah, I'm confident, I love being me, and I'm going to go out there and slay the world. They're slaying dragons in a fantasy world instead.
Yeah, they're not out conquering anymore. They're not crossing oceans, building their own ship, getting the funds together and putting the supplies together, getting a crew and crossing a freaking ocean. These days they're told that that's so evil. You evil men, you did that. You went out and conquered. But that used to be like the bar for being a man, was going out and conquering and accomplishing and learning how to shoot a gun and learning how to wield a knife and going to another land and seeing what it was about. Come back and report what you saw. You don't see that anymore.
No, and you said something really important there that I've just got to pick up on and run with. You said about building ships. You said, men used to build ships. Yeah, we used to have masculine industries, because we've talked about the feminist thing, but let's talk about the death of masculine industries. We used to have shipbuilding, we used to have mining, we used to have manufacturing, we used to have logging. We used to have brave men who went out there. Yeah, jobs. And guys, young men, young boys who wanted to become men would come out of school and they'd follow their father into the traditional industry, and there wouldn't be a generation gap. The boy would leave school and he'd become a man. He'd look up to his dad. He'd look up to the other men in the industries that surrounded him. And he'd want that as a rite of passage. He'd want to become a man, a real man. He'd follow his dad and he'd want to follow in his footsteps. And he'd want to win the respect of the older men in the community. He'd want to gain their respect. He'd want them to welcome him down to the pub or the working men's club and share a drink with him after work. And that was part of becoming a man. And these men would become strong. Physically and mentally, they were responsible adults who followed in their father's footsteps in an industry that had provided for that family for generations. And these industries are gone. These industries are gone. So they watch their dad on the sofa. They now sit on the sofa themselves. They don't relate to their parents. They don't want a job, and if they get a job, it's usually in something weaker or something that doesn't have that strong masculine overtone.
Or they're in a desk all day to the point where their body just...
Yeah, exactly. And then when they finished at the desk, they don't go and blow off the cobwebs by going to the gym. They rush home, they grab some takeaway food on the way home, and they sit up till 4 a.m. playing Call of Duty. So they're not doing anything masculine. They're not engaging with other men. They're not in a masculine industry. They're not following in their father's footsteps. They are literally walking from one screen to the next and barely seeing the sunlight. And that's another major problem. So they're not actually interacting with men or doing anything manly or physical in the workplace. And because their hobbies aren't manly or physical, they're having nothing in their life that is manly or physical. And crucially, nothing where they learn how to interact or bond with other males. They interact in different ways, and they're not real face-to-face or meaningful interactions.
And there's something to be said about a guy, at least in my opinion. A lot of the guys on YouTube will get really pissed when it's a girl telling guys how to be. But as a woman, I will say, I like it when I see a man who is fit, because it tells me that he looks after himself, he cares about himself, and he has ambitions in life. And a lot of them, I'm sure, go to the gym just to look good so they can pick up women. I understand there are some out there. But to me, it says a lot about a man when he looks after his physicality as well as reading or something. Like, to me, they're on equal playing fields. When a man does things out in nature, or if he has a really masculine job, to me, it speaks of someone who can take care of a woman in the future and provide for a family, because he's looking after the longevity of his physicality as well as his income.
No, of course. Well, men have got to be physically strong. It was always something that was held in high esteem for men to be physically strong, because when you're physically strong, when you go out, when you work out, when you look good, you're confident. And crucially, women want a confident man. No woman wants a shy, retiring, childish, unconfident loser. She wants a guy who loves himself. She wants a guy who's physically in good form and mentally in good form, because then she can look up to him, she can admire him, she can see him as a protector and a provider. And if men aren't willing to take up that mantle, if men aren't in physically good shape, if they're all day on social networks, if they're all day playing games, if they're sat indoors all day, if they're not in good shape, and if they're not confident, how can a woman look at a guy like that and want him? How can a woman admire him? How can she look at him and say, yeah, I want him to be the father of my children? If he couldn't even be a strong protector and a provider for her, how's he going to be a protector, a provider, or a role model for his children?
And a lot of these guys use social networks like Facebook and stuff in ways that make them look really emasculated. You and I talked about that when we were just having a phone call the other day about how men use social media as their means of connecting with other men and using it as a diary. Talk about that a little.
Yeah, well, I'm really pleased you brought that up, because we were laughing about this just the other day when we were having a bit of just a chat and discussion about life. But men using Facebook in the wrong way. Facebook's obviously controlled by our enemies. Look at the guy who runs it. Look what Mark Zuckerberg is. He's not one of us. You know, put his name in parentheses. You know what he is. Social networks were created to destroy us, and young men are using them in the worst possible way. Now, again, I'm not saying come off social networks, but use the social network for your benefit, not for your detriment, not to your detriment. And this is a major and very, very important point. People today communicate via social networks. Now, when you're going to write something on a social network, ask yourself the question, would you say that in a pub or a bar or in the street surrounded by people? And that's the key point. You see, when you're using these social networks, you're often in, let's call it your safe space. I know that's an SJW term, but let's call it your safe space. You've come in, you've got some problems in your life, you've had a big argument with your beautiful girlfriend, or the girl that you like has rejected you, or something bad's happened. And you come in and you sat there and you're in your comfy tracky bottoms, your old t-shirt, you've got a duvet laying over your legs, you've got a box of Maltesers at the side of you, and you're watching your favourite show on TV. You're comfy, you're warm, you're in the safety of your own living room. You feel safe, you feel protected. This is the kind of place where you feel you can say whatever's on your mind. So you log on to Facebook and you tell people. You tell people your innermost feelings, and you turn Facebook into a diary. A diary.
And women are guilty of this too.
Where people give you feedback, and people give you feedback, but not genuine feedback. They give you feedback in terms of likes and emojis and comments, but that's not genuine feedback. You know, people go on, oh, Claire, she's dumped me, and I'm heartbroken, and I feel terrible, and what am I going to do? I might kill myself. People are liking and they're sharing and they're like, oh, do you want me to ring you? I'll PM you. And it's all so false. You wouldn't go into a pub and stand up on a chair and start talking about how Claire had broken your heart. People would laugh at you. They'd point and they'd be like, what the hell are you doing, mate? Get off that chair. Get yourself a pint and pull yourself together. That's what people would say. But now people do it on Facebook, and oh my God, they turn their world into this interactive diary, and the crap they come out with, and they think it's so clever because it's fake. It's all fake. And they also do this other horrible thing because they're online. Like when you're in your safe space, everyone has a fantasy of what they see themselves as. Everyone watches something on TV. You might watch The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or, you know, a film, and you might think to yourself, you know what? I'd like to be in that era. I'd like to be one of those knights, or God, imagine what it'd be like in the zombie apocalypse. How would I survive? And that's your fantasy world. Now, you wouldn't go into a pub or a bar or walk down the street and start acting like you were a knight from Game of Thrones, or acting like you were one of the survivors in a zombie apocalypse, because people would laugh at you and you'd look like a dickhead. And that's the key. You'd look like a dickhead. But I see people on Facebook and they fall out with someone else and they challenge them to a duel. And you're thinking to yourself, I've actually seen this.
What is this, the Renaissance Festival?
They're like, you have infringed my honor. I will challenge you to a duel and you will face the wrath of my steel. You're like, you wouldn't say that in a pub. The only time, in fact, you might kill somebody in a pub by saying that, because they'd laugh themselves to death. They would literally be howling at you because it would sound so pathetic. You wouldn't do it. But because you can't read the reactions of people around you, because you're in your safe space, because you're doing this in a fantasy realm and you're projecting, and you can only ever get the static feedback of comments and likes and shares that you interpret in your own way, you feel safe to do and say things that you wouldn't do in public. So young men are increasingly living in this fantasy world and blogging out their thoughts and their innermost feelings and their emotions. Remember what I said earlier? Men are meant to be factual. They're meant to be more stoic. They're not meant to be these, compassionate, wet, empathetic creatures that are crying their eyes out all the time, but they're doing it increasingly, and they blog their whole relationships, letting everyone know their innermost secrets. Like, that's fair enough. Talking to your best friend, saying, look, I've got some real problems, mate. I think my partner's cheating on me. What do you think? I'm a bit heartbroken. You say that to your best friend. You say that to somebody who's in your family, your close confidants. You don't walk down the street with a megaphone and say, I think Emily's cheating on me. You wouldn't do it. Everyone would laugh. You'd look pathetic. And these men are doing that on Facebook, which ironically is more public than doing it in public, because it can be screen capped, hundreds of people see it, and other people are laughing. And that's the problem. And these men are living in this fantasy world. They're blogging out their feelings. They're becoming emotional. They're acting in a way that is completely irrational and childish. And it's all being reinforced by likes and shares. And this is an absolute problem. So again, you've got the gaming, you've got the lack of being outdoors, you've got the social networks, you've got the lack of masculine industries. And at the same time, everyone's blogging their feelings. Everyone's sharing their innermost thoughts and weaknesses online for everyone else to pick through, and turning their life into their own very sad and emotionally fueled soap opera for their Facebook friends. And none of this is real, because when it's real, when you sat opposite somebody having a coffee, you can read what the other person's feeling. You can see from their body language how they're reacting, and when you should stop talking, when you should stop with what you're saying, when what you're saying might be uncomfortable or cringeworthy. You're constrained by society. But when you're sat there in your jogging bottoms, and your scruffy t-shirt in your safe space, you're not constrained by anything. You're projecting fantasies and deep emotions which are yours and should be yours alone. And the man has truly regressed to being a fantasist and a child.
And that doesn't help attract a woman either. When I go online to dating websites and such, and I look back when I tried online dating, don't recommend. Apparently it works for some people. But you look on there, and it's a lot of what you describe, a lot of beta males on there, even using OkCupid or Plenty of Fish as a diary and admitting things on there that I probably wouldn't tell somebody until maybe the 5th date. And that doesn't help them to get loving partners in the end.
No, well, it's again, it is very, very sad. And I see this again on social networks. Women will post things up for attention. They'll be like, oh my God, had a terrible day. Don't want to talk about it. Well, of course you want to talk about it, because you've just told your 2,000 Facebook friends, this is obviously a cry for attention. And then all the beta males come in. Are you okay? Oh, I'm here if you need me. Do you want me to PM you? Oh, crying face. And you're thinking to yourself, is this for real? Do you chaps actually think that this girl is going to be any way impressed by your fawning and pathetic display of neediness? Because that's what it comes over as. It's neediness. And you see this in the comments of these alt-light YouTube girls as well.
I'm so
Those comment sections are an absolute joke.
They're a cesspool.
They are. You see these beta males and they're like, don't worry what anyone thinks of you. I'm not going to mention any names because I've already done that in other shows that we do. But, don't worry what anyone thinks of you. You're wonderful. And then this
give
sort
you a
of
little heart. Yeah.
She gives little heart, do you think you've got a connection with her now? Oh, is she going to be your waifu? No, because she doesn't give a crap about you. Because basically, you're there just bumming her up. You're one of her pathetic beta males. There's thousands of you who are
she needs your
orbiting.
$5 on Patreon, guys.
And they're never, ever going to acknowledge you. They're never going to acknowledge you in a meaningful way. She's never going to come around and let you take her for coffee and then for a steak dinner. You're never going to wake up with her on Sunday morning and say, wasn't last night fabulous, darling? Roll over and let's do it again. You're going to be sat there liking her YouTube videos, buying her merch, donating money to her, and you're an orbiter.
The way some of these alt-light YouTubers have merch. Sorry, that's like my new triggering thing. I'm just like, ugh. Sorry.
And these people, so you see, to me, a strong man should inspire other men and should inspire women, and women and men should cluster around those strong men. But these alt-light YouTube women who are clearly just shilling for cash, and these men are orbiting them. They are literally, and orbiting is the right phrase, because you've got to remember, a moon that orbits a planet never touches it. It never touches it. It's always at a distance. And that's what you'll be. If you're one of these guys buying the merch and donating, that's what you're always going to be. And if the best interaction you ever get from one of these women is that they like one of your comments or give it a little heart, then if that's making you happy and giving you a buzz, you're a very lost soul. And I've seen this.
Self-improve. Go to the gym.
I've seen this. I saw one of these Twitch streamers. This girl, she plays computer games in her underwear and she jiggles about a bit when she's getting angry. And one day she hurled the controller at the floor and there was a line of men buying her another controller, $30 controller. What are you getting back for that? What are you getting back? Because you see, I've always
seen... Shots of the boobies, apparently.
But it's nothing tangible. I mean, genuinely, if you're going to buy some tart a $30 controller on Twitch, and she's never even going to speak to you. Fella, if you're that sad and desperate, get yourself down a strip club. Because at least you're seeing the girl in person. At least you can talk to her. At least you're getting some human interaction. If that's how desperate you are, get down there. Because that's more honourable than giving it to a woman whose only acknowledgement of your existence is putting a smiley face on your comment. These guys need to pull themselves together. And they really, really do. And these women are getting rich off these men. They're never gonna burst through the screen and hug you or marry you or give you a kiss or give you anything meaningful. You are their cash cows. And these guys need to pull themselves together.
Yeah.
And they make good money.
Like 90%, I'd say 95% men that's given to them.
Of course it is. If you can't get a bird and you're donating big money to these Twitch streaming women and these women who've got fan clubs online, here's a tip. Here's a good tip. Spend it on yourself. Get yourself enrolled at the gym.
Yeah, gym membership.
Buy yourself a mountain bike. Do something good with it. Buy yourself some new clothes. Get yourself a nice shirt. Get yourself a haircut. Get yourself into shape. Sort yourself out. And then get out there. And when you're confident, get a real woman. And if you can't get a real woman, as I said, if you really can't, if everything's so bad that you just need that bit of female human interaction, you'd be better off down the strip club, mate. Because believe me, at least it's human interaction. At least you can look the girl in the eye. At least she'll acknowledge you. And that's a genuine point. Because these women are like strippers who don't actually give anything in return. It's like these guys who are giving money to these Twitch streamers and these harpies online who are just trying to rinse men. And that's what it is, it's rinsing. These women are like strippers that don't strip. They're women they're like going to a strip club and paying the girl, and she's like, well, thanks for the $20 tip, but I'm not dancing for you or taking my clothes off. Then giving you the middle finger and walking off. That's craziness. That's crazy, but that's what these girls are. These girls have basically given nothing but got everything in return. And that's not a healthy relationship. A healthy male-female relationship is a woman, an attractive woman, who is desired by a man, who gives the man physical and mental companionship, who bears respect and bears the man's child, and the man, for that woman, is a teacher, a provider, a protector, and the powerful, strong disciplinarian and provider for her children. That is a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship is not a man opening his wallet and throwing money at someone he'll never meet and has no actual connection to him whatsoever. And the fact men have got into this situation, into this horrible predicament, is because they've been feminized, emasculated, they've lost what made them men, and they are no longer able to act like men. They are like children who are lost, and part of being lost means they can't even talk to women. They can't even make that connection. And I know that some of my critics will go, well, you're not married, Mark. Well, I'm not, but you know, I'm not married and I don't have a partner, but I don't have any problem with talking to women. I don't have any problem going out and meeting someone. And yeah, for one reason or another, that might not have worked out for me. But the fact is, it will never work out for you if you're not meeting women and if you can't talk to women and if you're sat at home donating all your hard-earned cash to these internet harpies.
One area where you and I have both been very critical is the opposite end, which is MGTOW, or men going their own way. And this is kind of like male feminism on crack. I think maybe it started as something good because women do initiate most divorces. I think 70% of divorces are initiated by women. There's that distrust between the genders because of that. And a lot of these men were stripped of their income, they had their kids taken away, so they get to a point where they're like, screw it, I'm going to live for myself, and they go MGTOW or go their own way. But over time it turned into like this really toxic thing where they all talk on forums, and if a girl posts a video critical of them, they'll post it on the forum and it just gets flooded in the comments. Not that I'd know anything about that. And they'll say like, rape this bitch, like women are at fault for everything, and they will actually encourage younger men to stay away from women altogether. I posted a picture on Twitter the other day of this. It was kind of designed like a street sign of a woman in a wedding gown and the groom flipping her off, saying, screw women, screw marriage, screw society, I'm going to go do my own thing. And it's embraced by this hyper-individualism type of thing. And that's kind of like the opposite end on crack. If we've got these men that don't know how to interact with women because they've been stripped of masculinity and the opportunity to go out and learn how to be men. And then we have these men that I think would like to have a nice companionship, but they see the flaws within women and society. They see a lot of what's going on. They see a lot of what the alt-right sees going on. And a lot of them I hear do go alt-right. But yeah, you've got that opposite side that just says, screw women, screw marriage. We hate these people. Let society burn. And sometimes I can think of them as controlled opposition because that plays right into the hands of our enemies.
Well, I agree completely. I understand the risks of divorce. I understand what feminism has done to society and how it's tilted everything in the favor of females. I understand the risk of divorce, and especially this no-fault divorce. So, you know, you could have bought a beautiful £200,000 house and kept it nice for, 15 years. You meet a girl, she moves in, you get married, and 6 months later she's asking for divorce and she's taking half your house. So I do understand the risks. But MGTOW is genuinely cancerous. It's the mirror image of feminism. Men and women need to be coming together if we're going to save Western civilization. Men and women need to be having babies. And to throw
pretty much
away,
says let Western civilization burn. I've heard them say that.
Yeah. No, because they're just bitter, and they're bitter. Now, there is plenty of reasons to be bitter. Look, I can be very honest. I've been out with, some very, very attractive girls, and, I've had women who've taken money from me or conned me out of things. Obviously I was having relations with them. They didn't con me out of something over the internet, and I've never met them, but and these things are bad, and it is hard to deal with at times, and it's hard to deal with the way women have become. It is hard to deal with the feminist streak in modern women. It's hard to deal with the fact that women increasingly don't want to have children, and they're more materialistic, and they're less homely and less motherly. But the way we combat that, the way we fight back against it, the way we rebel against modern society, isn't by saying we're abandoning all traditional relationships, screw all women. That's not what you do. We have to embrace women. We have to show women that we are the alpha males. We have to awaken something in our women. We have to inspire them. We have to make women want to pursue us and want to pursue traditional relationships and bring that family unit back together. Because you've got to remember, the traditional family is the cornerstone of Western civilization. And running off and being an individualist and being a man who sits into his 40s or 50s playing computer games and drinking whiskey on his own and doing stuff like that and living in his mum's basement isn't going to save Western civilization, nor is it going to make women realize that the feminist path is actually wrong. And that's the key thing. We have to show women that there is a better way, and we have to inspire them, because ultimately what's gone on in Western civilization has been very recent, actually. It's been post-1945. But you've got to remember, there's been about 40,000 years of evolution that came before that. So our natural instincts are still there, buried somewhere underneath the brainwashing. And we can reawaken the natural instinct in women. Why do you think women go for richer men? They go for richer men because they want a provider. They still want a protector. They still want a guy that can provide for their children, can provide them a home, can give them a good living, and can look after them. And why do you think men still go for attractive, healthy-looking women? Because a man on the inside, he still wants a woman that can bear him children. He still wants a healthy woman who looks like she can have his babies and will produce attractive, healthy children for him. Those natural instincts are still there. They're buried underneath a load of rubbish. But to reawaken them, we have to be the best we can be. We have to, as men, embrace our masculinity and make women go, whoa, it's like I've been in this foggy haze of feminism, but boy, did this guy make me see through that. He made me see clearly again. Wow, do I want to grab hold of him and be the mother of his children? That's the way to beat it. The way to beat it isn't to go, screw you women, I'm going to go and hide in my mum's basement and play Magic the Gathering for 12 hours a day. Because that's not a pushback. That's actually helping the system's agenda. That's actually speeding white genocide, because you're removing yourself from the gene pool. And yeah, believe me guys, I know how hard it is. Not to get a woman, because getting a woman, believe me, it's quite easy. It's very easy. What's difficult is keeping a woman.
Sadly, that's true.
It's difficult to keep a woman. And trust me, to have that connection, and especially if you're a guy who thinks differently to the system, it can be difficult. It can be difficult to meet that soulmate. And a soulmate is somebody that you find attractive on 3 different levels. You find them physically attractive, because that's got to be part of it. It's got to be physically attraction, it's got to be mental attraction, and there's got to be a spiritual connection. That is the 3 facets of love. And you've got to have those things to settle down and to have children and bring those children up. And finding that in the modern world is difficult. But you are much more likely to find it if you are a masculine, confident man who is sure of himself, sure of his abilities, and knows how to treat a woman. You are less likely or completely unlikely to find that if you're hiding away from the world, and simply your only interactions with women are either to give them money online, or conversely to hate all women and write about how you hate women because, you know, one girl rejected you. Sure, one girl may have rejected you, but rejection has always been the case.
You're always going to deal with rejection. Just be ready for it.
Yeah, and rejection can sometimes be hard. I know that. I've obviously broken up with some women, and some women have broken up with me, and sometimes that's difficult. But you've got to just dust yourself down and get on with it. Rejection is part of life, and dealing with rejection is part of life. But if that girl rejected you, that might have hurt, but it's better that she left you and let you get on with your life to find the right person, than you had kids with her or married you and then rejected you, because that would have been far worse. So dust yourself down and get on with things, but don't become a MGTOW. Just because the other team scored a goal, you don't take your boots off and storm off the field and refuse to play. Just because you get a setback doesn't mean you're out of the game. You've just got to keep improving yourself and keep your confidence high. But don't give in to basically a movement that aids and almost revels in white genocide. Men and women need to come together for our survival, to rebuild what we've lost, and to ensure that the next generation of Western youth are actually born, that we have a next generation. So MGTOW definitely isn't part of the solution. It's part of the problem. It's a mirror image of feminism, and it actually makes men emasculated. It makes men feminized. It stops men from reaching out to women. It stops men from finding a partner. And really, that's the meaning of life. That is the meaning of life, guys. You know, we have two overriding feelings throughout life. One is the will to survive, and one is the will to procreate. There are two instincts. You know, we don't want to die. We want to prolong our life, and during that lifespan we want to pass on our genetics. They are the driving forces that have kept us going throughout the ages. To give up on either of them is suicide. And when I say suicide, I don't just mean the death of you, but the death of your family line, the death of your genetics, the death of your lineage. That is not what you want, and that is what MGTOW promotes. So my message to any man watching this who wants to improve his life, who wants to find a partner, is, yeah, use Facebook, but not as a diary, and don't be on it all the time. Yeah, play a few computer games, but make sure you're out in nature. Make sure you're improving yourself physically. Make sure you're a real man. Make sure you're engaging with other men in the real world. Get yourself down the gym. Improve yourself. Get confident. Because when you love yourself, when you look in the mirror and you're all dressed up and you've got that nice shirt on and a well-fitting pair of jeans and, you know, those expensive shoes, and your hair's styled nicely, and everything fits and looks great because you're not overweight, you've been down the gym, you've been out mountain biking, you've sorted yourself out. When you look at yourself in the mirror and think, yeah, I like what I see, you walk out that door with a buzz, with an air of confidence. And when you walk in the room, women will look at you. They will be drawn to you. In fact, other men will be drawn to you too, because confidence is attractive. But you're never going to be confident if you're a feminized, emasculated, beta male who thinks the only way to a woman's heart is agreeing with whatever she says and donating money to her online Amazon wish list. That ain't going to get you anywhere. So be a man. Embrace what made your ancestors be great. Ask yourself the question, do I want to be a wimp or do I want to be a warrior? And the answer should be simple, because warriors are men who define nations. They shape civilizations and they protect those civilizations. But what's more, they inspire men around them and women love them. And that is why our system and the establishment and the media and the feminists and those who own the social networks have spent so much time concocting and building this horrendous plan to feminize men, to make men not want to be warriors, because they want to beat that out of us. And ultimately, they want to destroy us. They want to kill us off, and they want white genocide. And the only way to push back against that is by being a real man.
And by embracing your ancestors, I think, to some degree. Honor your ancestors by carrying on your line. They went through all kinds of hell to make sure that you could get to this point where you can have a comfortable life, where you can sit in that recliner and play a video game and enjoy your evening in peace, and there's not crusaders outside trying to steal the food that you've grown or trying to kidnap your wife and sell her into slavery, which are things that our previous generations had to deal with all the time. Honor your ancestors by being that warrior, by carrying on their line, and acknowledging the fact that they sacrificed and went to war and died in battle so you could have these comforts.
Of course, and think of yourself like this. You are a product of the finest engineering. You are the product of 40,000 years of unbroken evolution and breeding. Don't break that chain. Don't let that bloodline die out. You are the son of the survivors, of the warriors, of the winners, of the people who survive no matter what, of the victors. That is what you are the product of. Do not let that die out. Go away from this and look yourself in the mirror and make a pledge to yourself that today is the day you make a change. Not tomorrow, Not next week, not on New Year's Eve, but today. Fulfill your potential and walk in the footsteps of your ancestors and carry on their great lineage and become everything that you were destined to be.
I think that's a wonderful point to leave off on. So let my viewers know, as usual, where they can find your work.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on YouTube. I've got my own channel. I produce a podcast every week. And on top of that, I've also written a book called The Fall of Western Man, and you can download that for free as an ebook from www.thefallofwesternman.com, and it's also available to be purchased in both hardback and paperback. Thank you very much.
And I'm Brie Faucheux. You can find a video version of this podcast up on briefaucheux.com or 27crowsradio.com. Take care, everyone. Until next week. Bye.